One should never speed up to catch up with life. One should slow life down to walk at your pace.
The ambitious young swordsman visited the Hall of Companions in hopes of becoming a great warrior. Upon meeting the Harbinger, the swordsman asked, "If I start now, how long before I can become a companion?" The Harbinger stroked his grey beard and replied, 10 years. The swordsman could not wait that long. "What if I trained every day?" he asked. 5 years then, the Harbinger replied. To that the swordsman inquired, "Well, what if I train day and night?" 20 years then, the Harbinger said, his face stretching into a yawn. "That makes no sense," the swordsman answered. The Harbinger looked him in the eye and cracked a wry smile. "Oh, it makes sense," he said, "for you see, those who hurry are slow to learn."
May knowledge of your divinity perish throughout daily trial.
I pay homage to the divines as a whole, and the invisible thread that is woven between them. One does not look at a centipede and see 15 separate segments. One cannot focus on a leaf, for in doing so he will neglect the whole tree. The path of balance requires you to steel your heart against that which is deplorable, and calm your emotions at that which brings you joy. It is through the evenness of mind that one can see through the shroud of passion and be blessed with the clarity of enlightenment. Boethia is the prince of plots, deceit, and conspiracy. Such words are sinister when spoken in the void. Yet, when the scales of power tip toward tyranny, when the strength of the dishonorable cannot be vanquished by a frontal assault, Boethia is there. Mola Gabal, meanwhile, is her nemesis, for he is strength and domination, and those who enslave others do so in his name. Although Boethia teaches us that strength can be vanquished, Molag Bal demonstrates that weakness is not a virtue. Mehrunes Dagon is the facilitator of destruction, the great equalizer of this plane. For when life is allowed to grow unchecked, it will wither from its own abundance. Such is the complexity of life, for all intentions, all actions, flow on the waves of balance. There is the story of a monk who traveled through a busy market, where a butcher was peddling his meats. The monk asked the butcher which meat was the tastiest, and the butcher promptly replied, "All of it. Everything I sell is tastier than the other." And when the monk understood the butcher's lies were true, he gained a fragment of wisdom. The Aedra are thought to be callous because they are indifferent, too often leaving mortals to their own devices. It reminds me of the parable of the acolyte priestess who stole from the alms bowl. The other acolytes beseeched the head priest to investigate the matter and cast the thief out. Yet the priest replied that he already knew the identity of the thief. The acolytes, angered, threatened to leave if the culprit was not revealed. "If I cast the thief out," he replied, "how will he ever learn remorse? If you leave, how will I ever teach you forgiveness?" That is one interpretation. The priestess, overwhelmed by her master's kindness, would realize the error of her ways. Perhaps driven by guilt, she would expose herself as the thief, and through her bravery, truly achieve the forgiveness of her peers. For any other path would result in bitterness and resentment, although these provide their own lessons, should the head priest choose to teach them. I was trained as a priest of Stendar, but I felt the temple did not do enough to disavow the militants who walk the land in his name. I considered converting to the Temple of Julianos, and had packed for the great chapel in Skingrad to begin my training. There was only one item I could not find, my copy of the book, Aedra and Daedra. I scoured every corner of my quarters, until at last I saw it. It was placed on top of a high bookshelf. Now, they say those who hurry only slow themselves in the end. If only I heeded such sage advice. Instead of reaching for the footstool, I attempted to climb the shelf, only to fall flat on my tail. However, as it so happens, I lost my balance but gained my footing. For when my head struck the ground, I had a vision. We Khajiit are quite adept, but the divine saw fit to change that. When I struck my head on the ground, I lost consciousness, but gained clarity. I saw Aedra and Daedra in the stars, side by side. They made no distinction between themselves, for one were all, and all were one.
One must both have purpose and flexibility. He may walk a path of many roads to the same destination. He may not know where the destination lies until the moment he arrives at it, and even then, it may not fulfill his true purpose. I am reminded of the story of a carpenter who was tasked with hanging a painting for the Count. The painting was hung over the bedchamber, and while it seemed to be a perfect fit, the Count nevertheless told the carpenter to take it down. Back and forth the pair went, from the study to the great hall, each time the Count requesting the carpenter to hang the painting, then remove it after walking the breadth of the castle. At long last, they returned to the bedchamber. Only this time, when the painting was hung, the Count was satisfied, for only by seeing all other alternatives did he know his choice was true. And thus, my request is this. If you will do me the honor of being my carpenter, and I yours, then I will forever be in your debt.
We would be glad to extend our welcome to any other who showed your dedication.
Then I implore you to ask them. To ask a question is to risk being a fool, but to cling to silence is to remain one.
Steps of the divine.
A wealthy Jarl will request a bard to craft him a verse for his children. The verse must convey his desire for their happiness. The bard meditates on the subject before returning with his verse. He stands before the Jarl and recites the following. May your children know anguish, pain and suffering. May they know boredom and strife, fear and despair. The Jarl leaps angrily from his throne and demands the bard explain this insult. The bard deftly replies, "Forgive me, my Jarl, You ask me to write a verse that conveys the spirit of true happiness. I believe I have fulfilled that request, for without knowledge of pain and sadness, one cannot truly know what it means to be happy. An adventurer treads through a cave when he is attacked by trolls. He runs towards a ledge and attempts to descend down a vine of hanging moss. It is then that he discovers a pack of wolves at the bottom, waiting hungrily for his arrival. Only the moss sustains him. If he waits, he knows that help may arrive. The cave is frequented by warriors and adventurers alike. It is then that he notices the dagger lodged in the rock beside of him. It is just beyond his reach, but he thinks he can lunge for it if he lets go of the moss.